welcome back to another video about this children's trading card game. Today I'm going to be going over my top 10, basically the most generic cards that are obviously very good from the upcoming set. So these are the ones you're going to want to be keeping an eye out for when it does release in English. Let's go ahead and just get right started. So this is vaguely ordered. I think you're probably not going to be surprised to learn that a lot of these are Atlas cards, and they get more generic as we go along. So my first choice here is going to be Cheers, and this is probably my most tenuous pick because I say it's generic, it's kind of only really usable in Vanquisher and Centurion. However, I do also believe that Vanquisher in particular is going to have like 4 or 5 like quite good decks, and well, certainly like 2 very good ones and like 3 more additionally potentially quite good ones. So I think that's in, and then obviously the Centurion as well, which will have its own set of decently playable things. So I think when you add all that up, there's enough there to make you go, well, perhaps there's something to this. So I definitely think that that is enough decks where Cheers deserves to be on this list. Why is this really good? Well, if you have 2 or more cards with the declared attribute in your damage zone, then you flip up to 4 cards in your damage zone face up, so you get to basically DR, un-DR 4 cards. Otherwise you get to draw 2. And I will say as well that this is a generic unflip 4 as well, because you don't, for the unflip 4 effect, you don't have to have all of the same attributes, whereas for the draw 2 effect you do. So obviously that draw 2 is the reason you want to play this card, and it is very good, but having that versatility is obviously very nice. And there are a lot of decks that are going to be caring about that DR, I imagine. So definitely going to want to keep this one in mind. I imagine this one was fairly obvious. Next, Pansy. I think this is a card that is going to be more generic than people are expecting. So firstly, it's a 5 attack level 0. Those are always good. Secondly, it has Future Folk and Dragon Leaf tags, so that's a bunch of decks that's going to be relevant in. But outside of the tags, I still think it's very good. And that is because of the Dragon Leaf's Oath ability. So I know the wording on this is just really dodgy, but for some reason Gate Ruler does this, where it has the, when this enters play through Sigron, you may do this thing, but it doesn't need to enter play through Sigron because its TD and its OD also activate that ability. So I don't understand why they couldn't just go, when this card, when this enters the field through Sigron, ability name. But fine, why not just do it really weirdly? Anyway. You choose a card without CNT from your graveyard and you put it on the bottom of its owner's deck. Now, why does that matter? The biggest issue for a very long time with especially Genesis summoning lists, but any deck that was kind of using Genesis summoning as a mechanic at all, and to some extent as well, these other decks that relied on having things that they searched for, was that obviously if that ended up in damage, or if that ended up in drop zone, or if you drew it, like, okay, well, it's dead, now you can't access it. And that was a particular problem, obviously, for Genesis Summon, where, like, okay, well, I want to be playing all these targets, but, like, once I go into them, that's kind of it, and, it feels really bad. And I think that is going to be a really strong advantage of decks that can use Pansy, which I think is going to be a large number, because they can just put those really good hits back, and that's really good. Of course, balanced with the fact you can't put counters back. If you could put counters back, this would probably be one of the most ridiculous cards in the entire game. But as it is, I think it is very good, and I think you will be seeing this card kind of everywhere. Next, Vold Storm. I think this is an exceptionally generic card here. So this is a level 1 event where you DR2 to look at your opponent's hand and make them discard something, or you can also like send something in play to the graveyard for DR5. I think realistically speaking, you are probably not using the DR5 that often. This to me screams like, okay, I'm going to go for my kill turn here. Slam down Vold Storm and just snipe out whatever interaction your opponent is probably relying on, and then go to town and smash face, right? Now, I will say this might not be as good if in-hand based interaction falls off, or we see opponents typically having more than one quite good piece of it. Because obviously from that point then, if you're only sniping out 1 but they have 2, like, it's not really doing much. But at the moment, it tends to be the case that your opponent only has 1 really good piece of interaction, and getting rid of that kind of makes their entire defense crumble. So that is why this card I think is quite strong. On top of that, it's in Atlas, and like that kind of has a bit of weight to it because Atlas is so good that like you're kind of heavily incentivized to like the fact that it's an Atlas and all the other Atlas stuff is so good means you're kind of already playing Atlas. And if you're already playing Atlas, then like why are you not playing this? I don't know if I explained that very well. The point is this card is very good. Next up, Gashadokuro revised Hellbreaker. So this may be a slightly more hot take, because it doesn't scream generic, I suppose, when you look at it. But firstly, don't care about the attributes, okay? I don't want you to look at them. I don't want you to look at any of it. I just want you to think, right? What do you think the number one deck in the format's going to be? Personally, I think it's going to be Superhero. And the reason I think that is because it has 8 counters that say Gear Up, which also reduce all damage, and, the mechanic is just inherently very, very strong, and it also has a whole host of other very powerful units. So whatever you think it's going to be, I think Superhero is, without question, going to be an exceedingly popular deck in the format. And more importantly, Gear Up is going to be fucking everywhere. Therefore, a hard counter to Gear Up is something that is definitely going to be very appealing. What does this card do? Well, it's a 7/3/2 with 2 charges, so it's functionally like having 9 HP, but most of the time a bit better, obviously Sky Strike permitting, which, when it attacks, you just nuke whatever's in defensive, right? So that means that this is going to go through a geared up unit and immediately start attacking the actual center. On top of that, this is instantly dealing with any big HP thing. You don't care what it is, you don't care how big it is, you don't care what interaction is happening. The only downside of this card is obviously if your opponent is able to summon something after this ability triggers through Sentinel Summoning. So with the exception of what, like Alice and maybe Atlas decks that are still playing Cheshire Cat, I don't know that there's going to be that many of them with how many good cards there are to play. And we'll come to a card on this list that I think is frankly better. Yeah, this is going to be super, super relevant, I think. Really, it's going to come down to how many decks can afford to play red. And the more decks that can afford to play red, I think we're going to see this card a lot. Personally, I might be wrong. I just think it's hard counters what will be a very large mechanic within the format. Next, Zeyreg. So this is definitely a way more hot take because I'm not convinced that I think Volnar is probably the weakest faction in this set. I think it's close, but I would have to say that on balance, looking through what they got, it's not the best. It's you'll hear my thoughts on Deathshade, but in a dedicated video. But I do not think Deathshade is good. So I definitely think Volnar got the short end of the stick here, and as a consequence, I don't think there's going to be as much Volnar running around in the format, especially with Lucy Arras basically getting told to fuck off and jog on by a card we will come to. So with that in mind, this is something where I was a bit hesitant, but I do have to say, right, this is a card that is really, really strong. And the reason for that is you can summon this if your opponent Sentinel summons. So if they Lucy, if they Dash Jordan, if they Cheshire Cat, if they do any of those things. In addition, I'm pretty sure this also works if they counter Henshin, right? If they counter Gear Up. I don't know why I chose to say Henshin in that case, but yes. Because then a unit is entering the field, they're gearing up into it. And that is going to let you go into this. So it's a 6 HP body, which means it clears literally every single gear up in the entire game at this point, right? Like the only, like, you know, and we'll come to the big one. You know what number 1 on the list is, okay? You know what it is. And it's also going to deal a burn 1, so you're going to be able to clear through that. You're going to be able to summon this, especially if you already attacked with the unit first. You're not really losing anything. I think that's very, very powerful. So I think for that reason, this is a card that is probably being a bit underrated at the moment. I think it's this nice anti-meta pick. And it's very generic in its utility, and it has a really nice set of attributes there. You know, Earth, Beast are like really nice ones to have. Deathshade is not good. Betrayal might be relevant as well, though. Next, this is the one legend I let myself put on this list because it would have been very easy to put any of the non-Wonderverse ones on here. I decided to go for this because I think this is the most generic of them, because I don't think there's a single deck that, like, if you could put this in, right, if you're not really struggling for that legend space and you don't really have to dedicate the counter space elsewhere, this is like an instant, like, yeah, this will go in, right? Like, why? Okay, well, the counter heals 2, right? So it's like it heals 3, because obviously that first damage is not being dealt because you hit a counter. And if you actually play it, well, either you slam down 2 cards and then draw a card, or you get to drive 2 in a drive-based deck. So regardless of what you're playing, what deck you're playing, this is going to be good. It does use your summon cap, but I'm pretty sure if you summon like 1 or 2 things, or if you summon 1 thing already and then you just play this, I'm pretty sure it will still play both. I'm not 100% sure on that. But even if it does use your summon cap, again, if you're just slamming down like 2 level 2s or a level 2 and a level 3 or like a 3 and a 1, like whatever you're slamming down, it's probably going to be worth it. And you're also replenishing your hand, so you're not negging, right? That's the other thing. This is just a wash in terms of you play this card and you get the card back. So I just think it's very useful generically, and obviously in drive-based decks this is way better because you're actually going +1 in drive-based decks when you get this card. So the other thing as well is, obviously, remember in drive-based decks, a little card called, I forgot its name, the set 1 card, OD, puts 2 cards back. If you put this thing back, oh, that's filthy. And there's lots of ways to obviously stack it. And, you know, basically, Berserker's going to love this card. But like any drive deck that's playing it, right, it's really going to love it. So I think it's like a very generic card. I think I've talked about it for a bit too long, but yeah, I think this is very, very solid. Now we're through that sort of... I think this this next card is going to mark kind of a gatekeeping point where it's getting really generic after this one. So this is the last, possibly like not super ubiquitous one, but I still think it's really, really good. And this might be the first one, right? So this is a 4/4/3 gear, which doesn't have a gear requirement, which turns off CNTs, which turns off CNT effects for damage it deals. And in drive-based decks is also giving you extra pluses. This is one of those cards where it's actively doing like a lot, and none of it is so broken, and certainly I would also say none of the parts add up to something broken, but they just add up to something that is just really good. There's no way, I think, to look at this card and not just go, damn, that boy's good. Any deck that is playing red, I think, is playing at least 3 copies of this, like probably 4, you know, because you don't have, there's not many gear up options in the game, right? It's important to appreciate. And the options that, like, the yellow ones are garbage. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. The yellow ones are garbage. And then the red one, I think, is just, I believe it's just this. This is your only red gear up option. And it's good. And then your other options are in blue and pink. And, well, we're going to be talking about those in a moment. So, you know, if you're playing red, this is kind of one of your better ones. And yeah, I just think it's really good. You know, like, it's buffing your stats in any ruler besides Berserker. And you can play it in any ruler. So yeah, just a really generically powerful card with just a bunch of really good effects. I think that's all you need to say. These next 3 are just like kind of silly. And so we'll start with the Silver Uppercut. And I definitely do think this is the worst of the 3, which is really saying something. So this is a counter gear up, and I feel like I've talked about this in almost every video about this set, but understand how ridiculously powerful that counter is. Like, that counter may as well read heal 2, right? Like, counter gear up into this and heal 2, because that's functionally what it's doing, right? Or heal whatever, because you're not taking any more of the damage that was dealt to you. Remember, this as well, this is a level 2, so you could, you know, fucking Trickster, whoop, I'm suddenly geared up if you just want to, I don't know, I'm not 100% sure when that would be super relevant, but maybe your opponent just has like if you just really need to block like a big 3-strike thing, like, yeah, okay, cool, we'll just slam this and I'll lose it, it's fine. Like, the only downside of this card is you can't play it in literally everything, but otherwise you can make this theoretically, you could make this like a 6-strike behemoth. You're probably not going to. Very few decks in the only Trickster can really do that unless you're un-DRing cards. But, you know, it's an option. Realistically, though, you can make this 4, and that's rather large. And, you know, it has Breakthrough. 4-strike Breakthrough is scary, especially when you're looking at the sheer number of gear up cards in the set. And I'm pretty sure Breakthrough works through gear up because it's destroyed. There's nothing in the defensive zone at the end of the check, so it should work. Pretty sure. Would certainly make sense logically. So yeah, I mean, that's crazy. On top of that, you look at the attributes. It's usable in Dragon Leaf, it's usable in Superhero, but it's usable in anything blue, right? Like, it's doing what it needs to do through counter. Like, the only deck that cannot play this is Alice. Like, that's it, because Alice is a wizard deck. Outside of that, and obviously wizard decks in general that are playing blue, so like Lucy Aris as well. Like, outside of that, and hence another reason why I think Lucy Aris is falling off majorly hard, because it cannot take advantage of a single one of these new broken tools. Yeah, this is truly cracked. I think it's absolutely insane. One of the 3 format-defining cards, and I truly think these are the 3 format-defining cards. So this is the first one. The next one, it's another Atlas card. It was really hard choosing between this and number 1, but you know what number 1 is, and I think I had to pick this here. So this is ridiculous, okay? This is a level 1 event, right, which you can play from your hand in instant action, and either, until the end of the turn, allied units ignore effect damage. So basically, you don't care about Lucifer. Fine. and arguably more importantly, until the end of the turn, any damage dealt to you becomes 1 instead, whilst 0 remains 0. So, you know, turning around and going, no, I think I'll only take 3 damage this turn, is obviously nuts, especially if your opponent is already committed to attacking with their ruler in one of those attacks, so you're really reducing their ability to do anything silly. This is going to slow down damage outputs so much. It's nuts. And on top of that, just having that versatility, when your opponent ever tries to do any effect burn damage to you, like to your units, you're always going to keep your board. I just think this is so strong, and 100% like this is a 3-4 of in every like if you're playing Atlas and you're not playing 3 to 4 copies of this deck, there's got to be a really good reason. Like the reason needs to be you never have the energy for it. Like that is the only acceptable reason, and I think those decks are gonna suffer. Yeah, I just think this is absolutely format defining. Second only to the best card in the game at this point. And that has got to be Space King Arthur Adriano. This card is cracked on another level. So, okay. The biggest problem with this card is you have to play Wonderverse. And there's actually not that many decks that actively want to be playing Wonderverse right now. That's the biggest problem. And when the biggest problem is playing one of, you know, it's not like it's bad, you know, it's not like this is an X-Vader card. If this was an X-Vader card, I think this would be way more interesting. Because this is truly crazy. So, attributes that are very meaningful, but really, you know, this is a counter 6/6/3 that you can gear up into the moment that you're at effectively half health. If you get this before that, no problem, you can heal. If you draw it, no problem, just hold on to it, and you can gear up into it from hand. You get to ignore burn damage, so this is just an anti-burn card. And a burn deck is going to get you to that 5 or less life threshold pretty quickly, and then suddenly you're going, fuck you, your deck doesn't do anything, which is obviously mad. And you're never really losing it while it matters. If you equip it during your turn, you get it for your opponent's turn. If you get it on your opponent's turn, you get it for your turn. So, like, you're getting value out of it. And it still has the silly power of counter gear up. So, yeah, I don't think it is a hot take to say that this card is the best in the game, and I don't think it's a hot take to say that those last 3 are going to be running the format. I think those are going to be ones you're going to see everywhere, and I think it's for that reason. I think that Superhero is the best deck in the game, because, well, surprise, surprise, Superhero is using and abusing all 3 of those cards at maximum copies. So, you know, I think that goes some way to explaining why I believe that. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. These are my top 10 picks. Basically, these are the ones that you just get your playset, all right? Just get your playsets now. If you join the Facebook group in the link in the description, there's people selling playsets pre-orders already for like the entire set. I think it's like $400 or something for 4 of everything, which is like nuts. So obviously keep an eye out for that if you're interested. But yeah, please do like the video. Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. Join my Discord server. It is probably the most active Gate Ruler Discord server for people with brains. And I will see you guys in the next video, or potentially right now if you just hop in. I'll see you then. Cheers.